Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Seekers of the Sacred. We are so glad to have you here today while we are surrendering to deep soul healing with the Dark Goddess. And my guest today is Frances Billinghurst. Frances is a metaphysician, an energetic healer, author, and a death walker devoted to the sacred mysteries. Through astrology, mythology, and hermetic teachings, she guides seekers into deeper soul awareness. She's the founder of Mystical Soul Academy and a prolific teacher of modern mysticism. Frances has written numerous books centered on natural cycles, sacred stories, and ways to weave magic and ritual into everyday life. She also teaches online courses, hosts conferences, and shares regular insights on astrology, meditation, and ancient wisdom through her YouTube channel. Welcome, Frances. I am so happy to have you today.
Thank you, Julia. It's lovely to be here. Lovely to be invited.
Yeah. And, I'm really excited because we got to meet through a conference that is coming up that you created called Awakening the Divine Feminine. And this will be a dedication to International Women's Day, 6th to 7th of March. So we just, before coming on here and pressing record, we just chatted a little bit about that so that we're really excited. And if anybody who is here who is really excited about this too and wants to celebrate with us, we're going to be putting the link in the show notes. So please check it out. You can watch that for free.
Yes. And I'll just point out, due to the different time zones around the world, it was going to be a 2-day event. Now it's a 3-day event.
Yay!
So it will be starting, say, I think Friday evening through to Sunday, which is International Women's Day. If you're in America or Europe, because I live in the Southern Hemisphere, it will actually be starting Saturday morning going through to Monday. So everybody can get together and experience everything that's going to be offering, which is fantastic.
So cool. Well, thank you so much for putting that together. I feel when I was preparing for today, I feel like also from my own experience, there is a moment on every woman's path where she comes face to face with the Dark Goddess. And I want to hear from you a little bit more. How was your own journey with the Dark Goddess?
Oh, dear. I was going to say, how long do you have? I feel like I'm one of these sort of people, and I think when I got my astrological chart done a number of years ago, I've got a lot of planets apparently in the underworld, which sort of explains I've naturally been drawn to, I suppose, the understudy or the person keeps getting forgotten, or in this case, sort of not so much dark as in dark and spooky, but dark as in wanting to find out more. And the big sort of drive was when I started experiencing loss in my life, starting off with my best friend. And then I had like about a 10-year period where there was just so much loss. My best friend, my cat, and then my best friend died of cancer, and then I got diagnosed with cancer, and then my mother got diagnosed with cancer and she passed.
Wow.
So out of the three of us, I'm still the one standing, basically. But it was through that journey, and I think trying to understand, because I have a very esoteric background, like, why is it happening to me? Is there a deeper meaning to it? All these sort of unanswerable questions that I think anybody goes through when you're sort of at that precipice, when you're experiencing trauma or horrendous experiences in your life. And coming out the other end, anybody who's gone through a cancer journey, I was lucky because mine was early, but it still stripped me of everything. It stripped me of my career that I was doing up to that stage, my identity. I had beautiful long black hair. I was very much sort of a gothic chick back then. My relationship, everything. And it left me coming out the other side going, well, who am I? And one of the goddesses, dark goddesses, and I have a different perspective as to who these beings are with the archetypes, or actually divine beings. I see them as divine beings. But one in particular that I really connected in was the Hindu goddess Kali, which can be very frightening and terrifying. But in where I live, there's actually an initiate of the tantric tradition here in Adelaide, and he had a little ashram going, and we would do devotional rites to Kali. And it was through those teachings that in the tantric tradition, they see her as Ma, the big mother or the great mother. She is more than just a frightening figure. There's so much symbology in her. She is time, yet she's beyond time. She breaks through all the illusions that we have, and especially, I think, in today's world, we've got so much illusion surrounding us. But she really cuts through the rose-tinted glasses and brings us back to our core self. So she was the one that and I still do have a deep connection with her. And then another one is Ereshkigal, who's Sumerian dark goddess, who is probably more known as being sort of the bad sister to Inanna's journey. But when you actually listen or read into Ereshkigal's story herself, she's the forgotten one. She's the one in deep pain and deep agony. And no one's focusing any attention on her. Everybody's focusing on the light, beautiful sisters, which is Inanna. So I was sort of was identifying more with these underdogs in a way of sort of explaining to myself or helping me to understand why I was going through this darkness, this period of loss. And not to say that I've come out the other end. I think we go through these cycles all the time, but it was very much a surrendering process, especially of all our attachments that we have in our Western world in particular. We collect stuff, we strive to be CEOs or have businesses. We seem to live through other people's eyes, especially for women. We don't identify who we are unless it's in relationship to other people, someone's partner, someone's wife, someone's mother. And it's coming back to what we really want. And yes, it was very humbling to just be in a space where everything I had identified with really wasn't important. And I'm sort of carrying that through today where I don't know, maybe it's my Aries nature, I would sort of make rash decisions in some areas, like the conference that we were just talking about. There was just a knee-jerk reaction to something that happened in my working environment. And I thought, you know what? I still think that the divine feminine needs to be brought to the forefront more. We're still living in patriarchy, now I'm going for a tangent. And there's still a deeper understanding of what the divine feminine really is about, and also what these dark goddesses can actually do for not just for women, but for everyone as well. So that's my big learning lesson, was to step out of control and surrender.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing also, that very, very personal, touching layer. I think this is always also for everybody who's listening and can identify. And it's beautiful to see, because you brought up Ereshkigal and Inanna, and I feel it's actually, it inspired me because I haven't spoken so much on like ancient Mesopotamia on the podcast, so I will do that more. But it's like how we can use their myths and stories, and as you said, like these divine beings or archetypes, like whatever name you want to give that, seeing them as a sacred mirror to what is actually happening to us. But sometimes I feel there is still a little bit of a disassociation. But then when we are going through that ourselves, it's like, oh, shit. Like, this is what it actually means.
I was going to say that there is, when people do like shadow work or the underworld journey using the Sumerian myth, the tendency seems to be focusing on Inanna, which is important because she's the one who goes through the 7 gates. She's the one who has to strip off her regalia at each gate. But her journey of descent is voluntary. When you find yourself at the precipice. Okay, my journey was through cancer. It could be just the ending of a relationship, or anything. You know, you might lose your job for various reasons, or even having to move house. When you're actually finding yourself involuntary in the underworld, I feel is completely different. And who's waiting for you is this being. I mean, yes, she's Ereshkigal, but she's more than that as well. And it's about bringing us back to who we are, what's really important to us.
Have you ever looked at a place and felt, this is really mine to go? This feels like home. And even if you haven't ever been there, certain lands call you. Certain temples move you from the inside out. Certain landscapes feel like a memory, like a soul home. And this is not accidental because your soul has a travel signature. And some people travel to protect sacred spaces. Others travel to awaken rose wisdom, or to listen deeply, or to go to places where your ancestors have once dwelled to retrieve that wisdom back into the present. So when you understand how your soul journeys, everything shifts. The places that you choose, the experience that you seek out, and the way that you move through the world. If you're curious where your soul actually travels and how, then take the Sacred Travel Quiz. It's a doorway into understanding yourself and your travel soul signature on a deeper level. The link is waiting for you, so click below. It's exactly where you ventured because, I feel that's what I wanted to ask. Like, what's the difference between consciously choosing to descend or finding yourself in a place where you brought it up before? Eventually, there's nothing left but surrender. So when was that point, or what was that point for you? Can you name that? Was it a process? Was it a moment? How did
It
you
was
realize that?
I think it was lots of moments that sort of led up to basically the straw breaking the camel's back. And I speak sort of candidly about it because I think this is part of my own sort of, not necessarily my healing journey, but how to make it sense in my own mind. But also part of my work is, if you want to teach something, I find it better to sort of lead by experience. So coming back to what was that sort of pivotal point, I would say that because I had this sort of tendency of darkness and whatever, and drawn to these darker deities even before I had cancer, I would say that I had like a backdoor pass sort of thing. I was sort of sneak into the underworld and just be there regardless. So that was my voluntary journey. But getting cancer almost like forced me to become an Anna. But what really happened is that part of my healing journey, trying to find out who I really was when I'd come out the other side, I started to travel. And one of the experiences was, she was an Australian born, Hindu trained high priestess at the time. He was living in Bali. So Bali Hinduism is a little bit different to Indian Hinduism. And everybody goes to Bali and does the spiritual retreats and events. Hers was a little bit different because she focuses on the temples. And we were going through these processes every day, going through different ceremonies at the temples, and she really sort of wove in the Balinese Hinduism aspect to it. Now, we'd gone to a number of temples, the water temples everybody goes to. We'd gone off to one of the outer islands, which for the time being, the memory just sort of escapes me. But it had a connection with, I think the god's name is Ratu. He's one of the more, I wouldn't say devilish, but more kind of confrontational gods in the Balinese pantheon. So we said our prayers, we made our offerings at his temple, and I was standing in front of this stone statue, and all I could hear in my sort of mind's eye or my voice or whatever was, "We've been waiting for you." I'm thinking, going, okay, this is interesting. I have no idea who you are. I'm a very logical person, so am I going insane? And I went with it. And then the next part on that day, we went to an underground cavern where there were lots of temples in there. And I started to have visions which were unusual for me. I started feeling, I would say it's like I was coughing up a fur ball. There was definitely something happening around my throat chakra. Someone later said it could be that I was trying to speak a language that my voice box today can't speak. And all of this was pretty new to me. So I was having all these experiences and then come back to Australia probably 3 or 4 days later and try and integrate into the real world, go to work. And the very first day back at work, I strictly recall sitting in the car park before I could even get out of the car, and I was howling. And I was probably, it felt like I was there for about an hour. I was probably
Wow.
there for about 10 minutes. And it was just uncontrollable. I don't know if it was grief, if it was pain. It was just, I just could not stop crying. And I have had experiences with that since, but up to that time, I hadn't. And I actually felt physically like my soul was trapped in a cage. And
Yeah.
someone said, oh, that could be the fact that, you want to be back on holidays. And it's like, no, this is completely different. I felt really restricted, that I didn't want to be there. And it was more of an integration period that I had to sort of work through, because even though my experiences weren't all that wonderful, to say that, but when you go through these spiritual, downloads or attunements or whatever you want to call them, coming back into the real world and embodying them into your day to day can be very difficult. And that was what I was experiencing, that sort of integration from being, basically in a week-long container of spiritual enlightenment or downloads, and then having to bring that through into my everyday existence. And that's probably one of the bigger lessons that I still carry with me today, because I see a lot of people sort of do what I call spiritual bypassing. They don't do that integration into the here and now. And the same with the dark goddess. It's like, yes, you can do your shadow work, but then you have to integrate it into your everyday existence. What lessons do you learn, and how you then move throughout your normal relationships? Because you can't just sit in the darkness or in the caves, or in my case in Bali, all the time. We do have responsibility. It might be wonderful, but we do have responsibility, especially if we have relationships or other people depending on us. So yes, that was the big realization. And when I reached out to the woman who led the tour, she said, well, why don't you just chant a mantra? I'm going, okay, to who? And she said, well, try Ganesha, the elephant-headed god. Because he's the remover of obstacles.
He's always a good option.
Really is, but the whole thing too, and that really got me into mantras, and chanting in a really big way. And it is this sort of almost a psychological process, because it's giving your conscious mind something to do. And you're tapping into, this egregore, these energetics of millions of people for thousands upon thousands of years who've all chanted mantras. So that power, and it's one thing when in this day and age where people talk about cultural appropriation. I don't know about anybody else, but I have always found the Hindu deities, the gods and goddesses, very approachable. They don't care. The Hindu people don't care, though they might raise their eyebrows up a little bit when I've mentioned too, when I was had the fortune of going to India one year, and I was in a marketplace and I wanted to get a little offering, a little plaque of Kali for the ashram that I belonged to at the time. I got warned that she's not a pleasant goddess, and I'm very familiar with Kali. So they do warn you, but it's like overall the Hindu god, I think because it's a living tradition, they're very approachable, and you got that extra sort of spiritual connection to that Ganesha. I just love him. He's one of my favorite gods with his elephant head, and he's there. And everybody wants him. So,
Yeah. Thank you. It's beautiful, how we're like weaving all of these different, cultures and deities together. And it's refreshing also to hear you say or, share your experience with the easy approachability, because I've also had, not for myself, but I know other people who've had other experiences. So it's good to hear that there's that as well. So I do want to touch on the integration, but let's go to the actual travel first.
yeah.
So you mentioned Bali, that was a big one for you. If anybody like in the world would want to connect with places where this dark goddess energy might be predominantly present, to really consciously like reclaim power, intuition, embodied wisdom, what would you say are places, just what kind of nature usually holds this dark goddess energy?
First thing, look around your local environment, because, I see, so dark goddesses as, I would say, is our sort of concept because of something that makes us uncomfortable, really. To me, goddess is goddess. Divinity is divinity. It's divine. We just live in this, can we blame patriarchy, that sort of separated the two, the light and the dark, never the twain shall meet. But if you look through the mythologies, any goddess can show, or even gods can show darker aspects depending on the story and what angle you're coming into them. But if we're looking at where you can connect them with the goddess, Earth, Mother Earth, we're on Gaia to start off with. So do you have caves? Do you have forests? She's connected in with the liminal spaces, the in-between worlds. So are you near a lake? So that foreshore area between the lake, the water, and the land. Are you near the beach, between the ocean and the sand? She's there in the twilight. She's there in that, the dawn. So it can be anywhere, really. So you don't really need to seek her out in specific temple places. And, there are temples. There's a number of temples dedicated to Kali in India in particular. I personally don't like big crowds. I would love to go to one of their temples, but in India, the people there, it's just like, I don't know if I could cope, but I think that would be absolutely amazing. But I find it in the quiet places, because to me too, as I said, the dark goddess is that uncomfortable place that she invites us into. And I'm thinking about our modern world where we are on call 24 hours a day with our mobile phones, 24-hour lighting, anywhere where we can go within into that darkness. So, or we could be alone in the silence, turning off all our devices and things like that. And some people, that can be rather uncomfortable, being silent, listening to themselves, just sitting there, and especially when you start going within and listening to your own self-talk. But I also feel that, in particular, my dealings with Ereshkigal, she opens up a place where you can just be. You can remove all the masks that you may put on to step into all the roles to please other people, even your own self. And even like with Kali, she said breaks the rose-tinted glasses, the illusions that we have, because she is the goddess of destruction, but none of her destruction is unwarranted, really. She destroys what's no longer wanted in order for the new to be rebirthed. And sometimes we get fed up of living someone else's expectations. Don't know about anybody who's listening to this at the moment, but what's happening in the world, what's being dumped on our media, I'm feeling a lot of rage and it's more than anger, it's rage. It's really deep-rooted rage. I'm
Sacred
fed up.
rage.
It really is. So one goddess comes to mind is Sekhmet.
Yes.
And I think one of the benefits of the dark goddesses or the divine energies or the archetypes is that they don't, they don't allow us, but they help us to channel that deep-rooted rage or anger or those deep emotions into something productive. And we have seen this, like in America and Minnesota in particular, where the people were getting together to use that rage into demonstrations and to use it as a force against the oppressors, to use that energy. I mean, and it's freezing cold in Minnesota at the moment, but there's people outside the detention centres waiting for anybody who's been sort of arrested to be released, waiting in the cold themselves. And so they're channeling that anger, that frustration, that rage into something beneficial for all. And that's, to me, is what the divine feminine ultimately is about. It's sort of moving through our own pain and trauma and utilizing it in a more powerful, constructive way that benefits more people.
Yeah, completely. And, I think for me, there was a lot that like clicked when I also not just saw Sekhmet like for herself, but within the context as a divine guardian for Ma'at, like divine law and order. It's like the restoration and like the bringing back into balance.
Yeah. And it is also, especially for women, that power to say, no, I've had enough. And that sort of, I don't know, astral slap around the face, as you're not able to slap some of these people these days. But it's just like, no, no, no. The mother is saying, no, I've had enough. So, yes. And it's really, and I think it's important too to feel into those emotions too. If you feel the anger, feel that, and then channel it, dance, draw, go for a walk, do something to channel it through, but don't hold on to it again. And that's the dark goddesses helps us.
Yes. So you mentioned Bali, you also mentioned India. Was there any particular sacred site or a sacred landscape that held you through a personal death journey?
Well, when my mother passed, I was basically getting on the plane to go to India. So,
Wow. Okay.
and I spent 2 weeks basically in the Himalayas, in the upper parts of India. So we're at a sort of village ashram, and we were right next to the river Ganges, Mount Ganga. So yes, I was spending a lot of time with Mount Ganga, and then also going to the temple that was dedicated to Shiva. He's sort of the counterpart to Kali and not in the myths as well. And he's also connected in with death in that transitional place as well. So yeah, so that was one of the big ones. We were right up in Gangotri, which is right in the near the Chinese border of India, and the water there is very freezing and cold. And one of the exercises that we did was those who wanted to would get dunked in the water. I was the first person to decide to do that, and in fact, I'm a little bit Aries. Well, I am Aries. I went off before people were ready, and all the catchers were ready stationed up there. So I went for a bit of a float down the water, down the river before the catchers were ready to catch you. So I really got dunked in the Ganges, which was again something that I really needed. But that was a really good sort of cleansing, and the whole thing about India and also that time in my own journey is that I'd lost my mother and I needed to be held by the mother, and that was the river Ganges. It was a Ganga. So very, very powerful for me as well.
I'm getting goosebumps. I'm like, yeah, I could see you in the water and coming out blessed by
Yeah.
the mother as, yeah, a different version of self.
Yes, yes. It's all sort of the shedding process as well. And you mentioned Sekhmet, and of course, we've got Karnak Temple in Egypt. I was there a few years ago, and again, when you're looking at her statue in the temple, um,
It's quite an experience, huh?
my body started shaking. I said, I'm a very logical person, so when my body starts twitching, it's almost like I disassociate. Well, not I disassociate. I disconnect. It's like my conscious mind gets pushed out to the side, and it's almost like I'm watching myself going, "What the heck's going on?" Body's twitching, and I'm just sitting there staring at this. And I know it's incredible statue, but it's alive. And then my logical mind's going, "How can it be alive?" And it's just like, you don't need to think. Just go
Just
through.
let it happen. Be in her
Basically.
presence. Let her
So
work through
anybody who's a
you.
very logical person, these things do happen to you. It can take a little while to sort of like bypass your logical self. And that may be why my experiences have been so intense, I think, is to stop analysing everything and going, okay, just go with it. You might think you're loopy, but just go with it. Someone else will be resonating with it as well.
Yeah, yeah, no, she's definitely big. I've seen her a couple of times, but then once she actually performed a heart surgery on me, and I was just like, what the heck is going on? So I do understand.
That's good, yes, yes. But and if you're not familiar, it's like with the Bali experiences. When I started hearing voices, when I started singing, light language, which to me, if someone said, "Oh, this person does light language," I'll just think, "Oh God, a new age freak that." And then next minute, I was doing that, so it's just like stop judging other people. It's just like, okay, big lesson to me. Stop projecting my own sort of biases onto people. And I think that's what the dark goddess or any goddess does too. A lot of it's self-evaluation,
Hmm.
looking at where you are, and then sometimes, and we live in a world which is very scientifically driven, where everybody's wanting answers. Sometimes there just isn't any answers. We just need to be, and that was probably one of my biggest lessons with Kali, is to just be. Just come back to balance and be. And that's all you can do. Breathe. A lot of it is breathing. As long as we breathe, connecting with Mother Earth beneath our feet, we're going to be okay. At the end of the day, these experiences are more to loosen us from the perceived world that we live in. That really, you mentioned my art earlier, the world that we live in is an illusion. It's not really all that important, or as important as we like to think it is. And it's definitely out of balance for looking at things on a deeper, more sort of conscious level. It's really out of balance, and we need to come back to balance.
I couldn't agree more. And we promised the listeners to come back to the integration part as well. So I feel that's that's a good part to hop over there. I mean, yeah, we can go and have these, Sekhmet or Kali moments, or the dip in the Gange River. But then when we are back home, like with our families at our workspace, in our communities, like how do we bring all of these ahas or mind-bending, heart-opening moments into our daily lives?
I think that's a very difficult thing to do, and it's
I'm
one
glad you're
thing.
saying it. It's like no sugarcoating.
Well, right, so straight up, it's very difficult. It's especially if the lessons that or the insights is that we need to focus on boundaries. We need to sort of, I say, flick our coattails, get the free riders off our coattails. People aren't going to like that. especially if they are loved ones near and dear to us, if we run around doing everything for them, sometimes we need to step back and cut the apron strings or just say no. And yeah, and it doesn't matter. I said if it's family, work colleagues, anybody, if they have this perceived idea and we've sort of stepped into a role where we are always there for them, for us to then step back and say, no, you're going it alone. I've had to do that recently with my own family. And when I spoke to my father just a few days ago, he said, oh, your brother phoned me. He hadn't heard from you for a while because I used to set up all the Zoom calls. And so my brother actually decided to phone his father, which I was thinking, yay, it's me sort of stepping back. And sometimes it can be difficult for us if we think, oh, no one else will do it if we don't do it. But again, it's a lesson for us. I'd say start small. If you want to sort of have this big revelation that you have to change your whole life overnight, that's going to be a very difficult journey or objective to sort of accomplish. Maybe write a list of things that you want to do and start ticking them off. Boundaries we want to sort of, or start gearing yourself up. Look for, because I work more with the seasons and the moon cycle. So it's like, okay, I've had a big revelation, what happened in Bali. Now that was about me, who I am. So I'm looking at something really long term. So I gave myself a year to come back to see what or where I would be in a year's time on what I wanted to achieve in that year. And that could be something, let's say, if you're needing to move house, relocate, change a new job, what do you need yourself? If you feel that you're in a dead-end job, if you need to upskill, what do you need to put in place? What do you need to, if you want to relocate, do you need to start instead of buying coffees every day, put that money aside? It might be over $5, $10, but it adds up and it can go towards your relocation fund. So start small, start with what you can achieve. Even if it's saying, no, I can't go out tonight to certain people, or I would rather spend that time by myself, or doing something that pleases you instead of pleasing other people. But it is one that, depending on people's circumstances, but the most important thing is to start. And I think this is one of the deepest or the most evident sort of issues that I have with modern day shadow work, how it's depicted. It's more like it's a checklist. Everybody checks the things. Oh,
Yes.
I've notified this trigger, I've notified that trigger. It's just like, but why are you being triggered? Have you looked into that? And what are you going to do about that triggering? It may mean seeing a therapist or having those difficult conversations with loved ones. It might even be your recollection of an experience that actually wasn't someone else's experience. So it's a miscommunication. So it's like, and I think at the end of the day, being honest with yourself, it's probably the biggest thing. But start small when it comes to sort of shadow work and integration. I like to recite or quote, I think he is an American psychologist, author, psychotherapist, something like that, by Robert Bly. And he said that for the first 20 years of our life, we have this big shadow bag. We carry this big bag around with us, shoving all the stuff into this bag that we don't like. And then for the rest of our life, we spend that time taking things out of this bag. So the integration, whether it's shadow work or spiritual work or anything like that, is going to take time. So give yourself time. Don't write yourself off if you don't achieve everything by next week. It's not going to happen. But listen, I'm a list person. I write a bit of a list of what I want to achieve in the next lunar cycle and the next year. And then I start working towards that. And I think, yeah, it takes time. But when you actually see things that you can go, yes, I've achieved that. I've said no to that person. I've decluttered my house. I've started looking around for a new job, or I've actually had a word with my manager. about a difficult colleague and they've mentioned an opportunity somewhere else, or I've thought, stuff this, I'm going to do something completely different, change my perspective in my relationship with money or my relationship with people, and then we can start the ball rolling as well. And I think that's the best thing, to start doing that.
Thanks for speaking into the permission part. I feel that is very important, and it gives so much ease and grace that we are sometimes not granting ourselves in that integration process.
Well, I
Thank
think
you.
too in our modern world, it's so instant, and it's just like it's this. This is deep. It's instant if you don't want it to be a deep change. If you want it superficial, if you want it to just, oh yes, I've done shadow work, I've sort of danced with the dark goddess, I've done this, but it's going to come back and bite you if you haven't done it deep enough, or if you want to change things for the longer term. I mean, my experiences in Bali, I was hanging onto a sacred bamboo pole in one of their Bali temples. Again, I had wonderful experiences. I think I cried every day in Bali, yay. But it was grief that I had suppressed from when my grandmother passed when I was 16, 17, that I dealt with. Yes, sure. No, I hadn't. I just suppressed it. All of that stuff was coming up. And it's just like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Finding, and being gentle on yourself. I think that's most important too. And everybody does things differently at different levels. And that's okay. Don't compare yourself to anybody. Because if you're going by what you read on social media or you see on Instagram or you hear from friends, they're not going to tell you the real messy stuff. And when you're working in this area, you are going to get very messy, but you need to. I think and that brings us back to being human, back into balance, back into my art, in ourselves as well. I think that's the more people get messy is what's needed in
Yeah.
this step.
And when I look at the lineup of the summit that's coming up that you've created, the Awakening the Divine Feminine, I feel there is a full permission state for all the different divine feminine archetypes. So we have women speaking on sovereignty. There's the wild feminine. There's cyclical womb wisdom that you can find there. And also one thing that I'm excited about is Medusa and women as ancient feminine nature authority. I'm going to be speaking about the Magdalene Serpent Healing Path. So what inspired you to create that and bring all of these different women from all over the world and the types together?
Well, I've done a few more spiritually orientated conferences in the past, but this is probably my finger. In Australia, we've got this saying called flipping the bird. It's like basically when you give your middle finger up to somebody who really annoys you, you can't tell them the F off. It happened last year in October.
The sacred rage turned into activism.
It's the pure sort of thing. At work, every month on our intranet, on our work sort of internet page, they acknowledge events and things like that. And October here in Australia is Men's Health Day, which I'm all for. Men need to look after their health. But there was a link to a site that was talking about International Men's Day. And I'm then going, I'd never heard about International Men's Day before. I'm going, what the heck's this? So I clicked on the link and basically, I shouldn't have. So my heckles got up because it was set by this group of men, and I can sort of see their premise now making excuses. Well, if there's International Women's Day, why don't we have an International Men's Day? And I'm going, you've got to be kidding. Okay, where do I start to explain why there is an International Women's Day? So I contacted our HR people, the people who was involved with the website, saying, I actually find this disturbing, or not the October Men's Health Day, but the link to International Men's Day. I actually found that quite, I would say disturbing. I said, I was starting to bubble up inside. And then I got the response back just basically, I wouldn't say it set me off the edge, but it was very close to, because we're all about inclusivity. I can't even say the word properly, but we want to include everybody. And I'm going, Yeah, but in order for us to be equal and inclusive, we've got to be equal to start off
Inclusive.
with. And hello, when have, when we're just looking at the two sexes, are we equal? No, we're not. We have never been equal. Come on. And I was happy to tell them how International Women's Day came about with the suffragette movement, and how even so in the 70s here in Australia, women still weren't allowed to open up a bank account in their own name, get a mortgage in their own name. And this is like
Same in
recent
Switzerland.
memory. Yes. I
It's
think
like,
in a
and we're
lot of
not
West,
even talking about hundreds of years ago. It's like, nope.
this is, yes. So this is like, so my mother, and maybe younger viewers, it's just their grandmother. So this is like recent memory. I so basically that's what's inspired me going, okay, International Women's Day, I do something personally for International Women's Day myself. And I thought, you know what, if and I feel sorry for the poor girls at the other end at work, because they were a little bit younger and so they're very much into everybody being inclusive, and I can understand that. But it's just like, to me, I felt they missed the point. And and then it got me to think, saying, well, is this the younger generation forgetting what or how International Women's Days came about? It isn't just, and I was also seeing this is how it's being marketed. This is the day for women get together. We have an overpriced business breakfast, some key speakers, and that's about it. If you're lucky, your boss may, I don't know, that you have an extra 5 minutes longer for lunch,
Mm,
but that's not changing anything.
mm.
And so I thought, I'm going to do something, because why the heck not? Some of the speakers that have attended or been part of other events that I've had, and what I'm really excited, and this is why I've sort of expanded it to the 3 days, is Dakini Kali had offered to do, because she does bliss dancing, which I've never done any bliss dance before. It's a
Mm.
full embodied tantric sort of dance. And she wanted to offer that. And so we're looking at sort of time zones and how we could actually include that. And my apologies to anybody in America. You don't have to get up a bit early. It's been morning for you, but it's evening for me, and it's afternoon for Carly. Carly, no, I think it's
For Kali.
late morning for her. For her, yeah, Carly. There's a reason why we sort of connect. But when she was talking about the bliss dance, it was again, I think this is what us women need, because we suppress our emotions, our feelings, and we've suppressed it. Our mothers have suppressed it. Our grandmothers have suppressed it. We carry all this energy through us. People might have seen the pictures on social media that, I think, in, say, your grandmother's body, she's pregnant with your mother. Your mother, even
Yes.
as a fetus, has the eggs, which is you. So there's 3 generations connected. So we carry this energetic imprint, emotional imprint with us. If not from our grandmothers, it could even be from our great grandmothers as well. And I thought, well, I used to like dancing, so why not? So she's going to do this live dance class, talking us through it from the beginning, and it's going to be about dancing into all these feminine archetypes as well. And then she's also going to be doing a integration right at the end as well. So the whole event's going to be like, well, workshop's going to be about 2 hours long, but I think it's going to be great. You can just get headphones, get some friends together, and dance around your living room
Yeah.
and just experience and connect also in with these powerful archetypes of the feminine. So that's how it came about, and yes, I'm looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward too. So everybody, if you're excited and want to celebrate International Women's Day with us in a maybe different format, then sign up via the link and join us.
Yep.
Thank you, Frances. It's been such a great conversation. And I know that it feels a little bit like we didn't do full justice because we scratched the surface and the dark goddess is like, boom. But it's a gateway, it's a portal for everybody who wants to dig deeper. And where can people find you and more about you?
the most important or easiest site is through the Mystical Soul Academy. So that's all one word, mysticalsoulacademy.com. I have a newsletter there. I've got various offerings. I've got free offerings. Yeah, you can find me there. My YouTube channel. I'm one of these people. I can't seem to invent a fancy name for me. So if you just Google Frances Billinghurst, you'll find be bothered. I'm at that age where, you know what, I can't be bothered inventing a fancy name or title for myself. I am who I am. This is probably the only thing that I've got left after my cancer journey. People can reach out to me. My email is always on the website. I said I do events. I do some courses which sort of like study at your leisure or on-demand courses through Udemy. I have a Dark Goddess course through there, sort of an introduction. As you said, it's an introduction to the Dark Goddess because she's so much. I've written a book about her as well, and all those can be found on the Mystical Soul Academy. And as I said, or just Google me and you'll find me.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on and sharing your wisdom and the medicine of the Dark Goddess. And yeah, I'll see you at the summit. I'll see you at the dance.
Thank you very much, Julia. And again, I'd like to thank you for being part of Awakening the Feminine Divine, because I was really interested in your talk. It was fantastic. And again, we didn't cover everything. So, it could be something brewing for later date as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening and tuning in. And as always, stay curious and try to seek out the extraordinary. Until next time.